They say it's better not to disturb the past, but sometimes it finds you on its own, turning your whole life upside down. That day started as usual. Rachel, my wife, was getting ready for work, while I pretended to read the morning paper. "You haven't forgotten you promised to sort through Mom's books?" She applied lipstick, looking in the hallway mirror. "Ah, yes, of course. Miles, are you even listening to me?" I was listening. It's just that lately our marriage had resembled a worn-out record. The same phrases, the same reproaches. Esther, my mother-in-law, was moving to a smaller apartment. Her huge house had become too big after her husband's death. I was tasked with sorting through the library, a job Rachel had categorically refused. "She'll throw half of it away anyway," my wife snorted. "Why waste time?" Esther's house smelled of coffee and old books. She met me wearing a house dress that surprisingly complemented her still slim figure. "Miles, darling, are you sure you don't mind helping?" "Not at all, it's fine." "Shall we start with the upper shelves then?" I climbed the stepladder and began sorting through the volumes. Old editions, classics, some magazines. And suddenly, an envelope that fell from a worn copy of Wuthering Heights. "What's this?" I unfolded the yellowed paper. "My darling, I know I'll never send this letter. I know I must keep silent about my feelings, but every time you appear in my house, when your eyes meet mine—" The letter broke off mid-sentence. "Esther, I found—" She paled, seeing the envelope in my hands. "Oh, I thought I'd burned it. Who was it meant for?" "That's not important." She tried to take the letter, but I instinctively pulled my hand back. "Miles, please." Our fingers touched, and something strange flashed in her eyes. "Sorry," I returned the envelope. "Didn't mean to be tactless. It's nothing." She tucked the letter into her pocket. "Just old memories." All day I couldn't get those lines out of my head. Who had she written to? When? And why hadn't she finished? At home, Rachel didn't even ask how my day went. Just muttered something about a late dinner and went to the bedroom. And I lay sleepless, imagining Esther writing that letter, pouring her secret feelings into it. And for some reason, these thoughts made me feel anxious and excited. The next day I returned to Esther, supposedly to continue sorting books. In reality, curiosity was tormenting me. "You again?" She raised an eyebrow in surprise. "What about work?" "Took the day off," I lied. "Wanted to finish with the library." She wore a dark blue dress that made her look remarkably younger. At 53, Esther looked stunning. Years seemed to have no power over her. "Coffee?" she offered. "With pleasure." We sat on the veranda, and I couldn't gather the courage to bring up the letter. She noticed my glance. "You want to ask something?" "Yesterday's letter." "Ah," she smiled. "Still can't let it go?" "Sorry, it's just so personal." "Yes," she lit a cigarette. "Very personal." "Was it long ago?" 3 years ago." I was surprised. "But your husband was still alive." She exhaled a stream of smoke. "That's exactly why I never sent it." Something in her tone made me wary. 3 years ago. Right when I married Rachel. "You know," she continued, "sometimes we meet people who turn our whole life upside down, and there's nothing we can do about it." Her eyes met mine, and I felt my mouth go dry. "Esther?" "Yes, darling?" "That letter, it was—" "I think you've already guessed." She stubbed out her cigarette. "Want to read the ending?" "It's not finished." "Oh, no." She stood and went to the secretary. "I finished it. Just never showed it to anyone." She took out another envelope, handed it to me. Her hands trembled slightly. I began reading, and with each line my heart beat faster. It was a declaration of love. To me. "Why?" was all I could manage. "Don't you understand?" She came closer. "All these years, every time you appeared in my house, her perfume, something floral and heady, made my head spin. I should have left, should have stood up and left, but I stayed." We sat on the veranda, and time seemed to stop. The letter lay between us like a time bomb. "I always wondered," my voice sounded hoarse, "why you sometimes look at me that way." "And how do I look?" She moved closer. "As if you know something about me that I don't know myself." Esther smiled. "Maybe I do." For instance, I know you're unhappy with Rachel. I don't deny it. I see it in your eyes every time you come for dinner. She was right. My marriage had long turned into routine, endless pretense. You know what I felt when writing this letter? She picked up the envelope. Fear and freedom. For the first time in many years, I allowed myself to be honest. And now what? What do you want to happen now? She was so close. Her eyes seemed to hypnotize me. They held the same things written in the letter: passion, longing, desire. I should go, I whispered. You should. She touched my hand. But do you want to? The first kiss was awkward, almost accidental. The second, more confident. Her lips were soft with a taste of coffee and cigarettes. We shouldn't, I breathed. I know, she pressed against me. But I've waited 3 years for this. The doorbell rang. We sprang apart as if scalded. Damn! Esther looked out the window. It's Mrs. Parker, the neighbor. I quickly straightened my shirt. I better go through the back door. Miles, she grabbed my hand. Come tomorrow. Rachel will be at the conference. I nodded, knowing it was madness, but already knowing I would come. At home, I stood in the shower for a long time trying to wash off the scent of her perfume and the taste of her kisses. It didn't help. Rachel was saying something about her upcoming trip, while I could only think about what would happen tomorrow. I arrived at Esther's at noon when the sun was particularly hot. She met me in a light silk dress. I thought you might not come. I thought so too. The house was cool and smelled of freshly brewed coffee. That same letter lay on the table in the living room. Was rereading it, she said, following my gaze. Every word is still true. She came closer, and I caught the scent of her perfume, the same as yesterday, but today it seemed even more intoxicating. Esther, shh. She pressed a finger to my lips. Don't say anything. Her kiss was demanding, passionate, completely different from yesterday. It contained everything she'd written in the letter. Years of unspoken feelings, restrained desires. Reality dissolved in the living room's half-light. Only touches remained, whispers and rustling clothes. Her skin was incredibly soft. It all felt like jumping into an abyss, terrifying, but impossible to stop. Time stopped, leaving only passion and the madness of the moment. Later, as we lay on the couch, she asked, "What are you thinking about? About what we've done? Do you regret it?" I looked at her, flushed, with disheveled hair, incredibly beautiful. No, and that's what scares me most. She lit a cigarette. You know what's strangest? I imagined this moment 1,000 times, but reality turned out, what? Better and scarier. At that moment the phone rang. We both jumped. It's Rachel. She looked at the screen. Probably wants to tell me how the conference went. I started hurriedly dressing. Reality was returning, and with it came the realization of what had happened. The following weeks turned into an elaborate game. Every pretext to meet seemed both a risk and salvation. Mom asked for help with the computer, I'd tell Rachel. Need to finish with the books, I'd explain my delays at work. Esther was inventive in creating reasons to meet. Dear, could you send Miles over? I think the faucet's leaking. I'm having problems with the printer, and your husband is so good with technology. Each meeting was like a fire, passionate, dangerous, uncontrollable. We made love in the living room, the kitchen, her study. Each time, as if it were the last. You've changed, Rachel noticed one evening. Become somehow distant. Lots of work. Really? Mom says you often stop by to help. I froze. Well, yes, she's alone. You know what's strange? She put down her magazine. Every time you come back from her, you smell of her favorite perfume. Does she always hug you goodbye? Her voice turned icy. That same evening I called Esther. She suspects something. Calm down. Her voice sounded tired. Rachel has always been paranoid. We need to be more careful. Or stop being afraid. What do you mean? Maybe it's time to stop hiding? Start everything anew together? I remained silent. She sighed. I'm sorry, I know it's selfish. I'm tired of sharing you with her. Esther, come over now. I need to see you. And I went like a complete idiot, inventing another lie about urgent work. But this time, things didn't go according to plan. Rachel was waiting for me at Esther's house, standing leaning against her car, phone in hand. "I've been following you," she said calmly, "for the last 2 weeks." I stopped the car but didn't get out. She came over herself. "You know what's funny? I've suspected for a long time. Just didn't want to believe it." "Rachel, no, be quiet, let me finish." She took out a cigarette. "You both tried so hard to invent excuses, hid so carefully, and gave yourselves away so stupidly over little things." A shadow flickered in the window. Esther probably heard our voices. "How long?" Rachel asked. "A month." "You're lying," she smirked. "I saw that letter 3 years ago when I was helping Mom sort through things. Everything was clear even then." The house door opened. Esther came out onto the porch. "Darling?" "Don't, Mom." Rachel raised her hand. "Just don't." A heavy silence fell. Only the wind rustled the leaves, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. "I'm filing for divorce," Rachel finally said. "And you know what? You can stop hiding now. You deserve each other." She left, leaving us standing in the rays of the setting sun, lovers exposed by their own carelessness. "What now?" asked Esther. "I don't know." And that was the truth. When the secret becomes known, it loses half its charm. Passion, nourished by prohibition, begins to fade in the light. We didn't move in together, didn't try to build a new life on the ruins of the old one. Sometimes some stories are better left unfinished, like that first letter. They say love doesn't choose time and place, but sometimes it chooses such unsuitable people that you can only marvel at its sense of humor. Now when I see old letters or accidentally catch a familiar scent of perfume, I think about that summer, about passion born from ink on paper, about how sometimes the past catches up with us to teach us a lesson about the present. Perhaps some letters really are better left unfinished. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.